What is going on, everyone? Happy Monday and welcome into the TDR Trade To Black podcast. I am your host, Shad Dales. I think we need some of that Zen moment that Guap was teaching us a week and a half ago because panic seems to be setting in right now. And I think we want to just walk things through, try to do what we can to calm things down because I know a lot of people, as we can see, the way this market is performing right now, that people are anticipating news, many believing, are we going to even get news at some point? So we will break down a story over the weekend, Wall Street Journal, talking about the Biden administration who has at odds with the federal officials based off of last week's State of the Union address comments. Is that really true? Is that fear-mongering by the mainstream media? Well, let's find out. Welcome in, TDR co-host Anthony Varell. Happy Monday.
How's it going?
And we're beginning to see this trend happening consistently. As Dan the Chartman has told us a couple Fridays in a row, we need some news, and we continue to see things slowly decline over the last couple of days, but another down day.
Yeah, it was an ugly day. Really ugly day. Looking at the tape, we're not getting ahead. I mean, news isn't imminent.
I know.
So I mean, it's a waiting game here. It's looking at the tape and being confident in what you're in, and just waiting it out and not looking at the price action. If you look at the daily price action, you're going to go crazy.
Yeah,
to be quite frank. And I mean, give me a couple articles with reputable sources that are not, or that are at the DEA, and I'll take those articles seriously. But as Don said last Friday, he hasn't heard anything, and nothing's actually come out of the DEA as far as we know. So I doubt whatever's the least bit relevant.
I hear you. He did say some telling stuff, though, where he says it's pretty much a lock based off of Biden's comments. We'll get into that a little bit later.
Language.
That's strong language. You think? Between now and July. So Don's on the clock, but if there's ever any person that we lean to for direction, Don is it. And we mentioned that on Friday. Big week coming up. We've got companies like Air Wellness, Jushi, the Cannabis, Terracin. If I'm missing anyone, let me know. But a lot of earnings announced that are upcoming this week. And also one that was announced earlier this morning, big company and actually friend of the podcast, NewLake Capital, and their CEO, Anthony Coniglio, who actually joins us to dive in to his latest earnings. Happy weekend. And congrats, turbulent industry to say the least in 2023. But you guys grew. So, if you're sitting in front of a group of investors, what's the main message, I guess, that you wanted to share with your investor base and what your overall thoughts were based on your 2023 growth?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. And thanks for giving me an opportunity to talk about NewLake. And so what I would tell our investors is the performance that we experienced in 2023 is a function of the disciplined approach that we've taken to deploying our capital over the previous 4.5, 5 years. And it's arguably the most difficult time in the modern cannabis industry, if you will, or at least the state legal industry that any of us are aware of. Difficult financial metrics, difficult operating environment, lack of access to capital. And it's been really impressive to watch some of the earnings that have come out so far and some of those that I expect to come out this week. That shows how hard the operators have worked to right the ship and to create some free cash flow and get profitability. Those are the companies that we like to focus on. So during what was a difficult year for the overall cannabis industry and REITs generally, we delivered record revenue, we delivered record AFFO, and we increased our dividend not only in the fourth quarter, but we announced today that we increased our dividend for the first quarter as well. So again, a testament to the team, just have been doing a great job in building a good portfolio.
What do you think were some of the key factors, if you look at how you were able to grow? Because like you said, it is challenging times for the industry right now. But if you look at year over year growth, what would you attribute a lot of that key success to over the past year?
Well, again, it comes down fundamentally to being able to have a quality portfolio that pays rent into the company, right, on a monthly basis. And so we weren't without our issues during the course of the year, but we rectified those. And when you look at having that stable rent base and then being able to add a couple of transactions during the course of the year, we added tenant improvement dollars to 2 facilities and 2 great tenants of ours, one in Missouri and one in Arizona, both states that recently went rec or adult use that needed the added capacity for our tenants. And so we've been funding those over the course of the year. And we still have a little bit of TI left on those projects to go out in 24.
Yeah, makes sense. Go ahead, Anthony.
I was going to say, Anthony, congrats on the report. I mean, I kind of wanted to kind of touch on capital deployment. I know you deployed around 14 million in 2023, getting more aggressive going into year's end. I mean, do you see the firm getting more aggressive in capital deployment this year, now that we're kind of seeing a normalization of rates to a certain degree, as well as some of these regulatory tailwinds that we're facing?
Yeah, to answer that, let's go back to why were we not more active during 2023? We weren't more active because we were trying to watch the cannabis landscape, make sure that what everybody was saying they were going to do in terms of focusing on free cash flow was going to be executed, but also watching our cost of capital and watching the volatile rate environment. So as we sit here today in 2024, we see a more stable rate environment, which gives us a greater confidence on our cost of capital, but we also see a more stable operator environment. Listen, there's a lot of noise going on in the market right now. And even I think in the lead-in, you guys were talking about the negative sentiment. But that's sentiment, right? We focus at NewLake on fundamentals, and we like to focus on businesses that are run by good management teams that are in the right states, limited license states that can generate meaningful cash flow.
Yeah. Well, with rates actually a little bit more stable this year, what would you then say is the domino effect? Like, what are some key market trends within the overall industry that you anticipate based off of that, especially the real estate model here moving forward?
Yeah, and we touched on some of these in our earnings call earlier today. There are a number of catalysts that are on the horizon that are changing the dialogue with operators to one that was, I need to focus internally, I need to focus on executing my business plan in 2023, to now we're having conversations about expansion again. People are starting to think about CapEx. And part of that is what's happening in Ohio. We now have adult use approved in Ohio, and that program will roll out. People are thinking in Virginia, what do I do in Virginia? Maybe I can get a license in Virginia. Maybe I want to expand my Virginia platform to hopefully step into an adult use market there. Folks are thinking about New York. You could go on and on with the various states, but there are these catalysts at the state level that are driving folks to think about expansion yet again.
When I look at, I'm going to break down some of these numbers. So grew 5.1% to 47.3 million. Net income attributable to common stakeholders rose to 24.6 million for the full year. And a really important one, you announced a dividend increase to 41 cents per share for the first quarter of 2024. We've talked about this a lot. You don't hear a lot of dividends early on within this industry, but all in all, as I said, like, it's turbulent times right now, I think, for the industry, but we're just playing this regulatory waiting game. But if that were to happen, obviously, who knows where this goes, but, needless to say, it was a strong year in uncertain times within the overall industry.
Yes. And if you think about what we are as a real estate investment trust or REIT, we're focused on paying out dividends. We're required under law to distribute dividends to avoid double taxation, which is one of the key benefits of real estate investment trusts. And so we've been raising our dividend every year since our since our founding in 2019. So we're building that track record of growing not just revenue, but what we call AFFO, or available funds from operations. That is the key metric for a REIT that you would want to look at. And so we've been growing our AFFO year after year. We've been growing the dividends that we pay out year after year as well, which is the sign of a very healthy REIT.
That's great.
In addition to dividends, right? When we talk about giving capital back to investors and rewarding investors, I also want to highlight that we bought back stock in 2023. Yeah. We bought back a fair amount of stock. We bought back about $12 million of stock in very accretive prices. The average price that we purchased stock back at is $13. So nicely accretive on any measure, but especially relative to where you've seen us trading over the last few weeks. So we've created value that way for our shareholders, not just executing new transactions.
Let me ask you, Anthony, you bought stock back. So what can you share with our audience with regards to your company in the industry that maybe you're seeing that, let's face it, the industry, the way it's trending the last week or so, they're not seeing something. So what are you seeing that maybe they're not?
Yeah. And again, I touched on this during our call. We believe that all the noise we're hearing out of Washington, it's all positive long-term, meaning to me, it's the inevitability of normalization and legalization, the inevitability of normalization and legalization. It may not go on any of our timelines. It's never going to go as fast as any of us want to think. But it is going to happen. I just don't see a scenario where the federal government totally has an about face. You can't walk back the 252-page memo. So I believe in the inevitability. And when you look at our portfolio, we're investing in long-term leases that have 15 to 20 years. We have a 14.2-year weighted average remaining lease term. So we have long-term contracts in place. So we're in this business for the long term. And so we're really bullish that over time, there will be normalization and there will be legalization.
Last thing before I let you go. What'd you think of President Biden, the State of the Union address? I know we got about 12 seconds of fame for the industry, but nevertheless, we've never, ever had the industry spoken about in that kind of setting, but a big step, right direction, your reaction to what he said. And what do you think happens after that, or anything at all?
Well, again, I put it in that category I was just talking about. Unbelievably positive for the industry on that national stage to have President Biden talk about cannabis policy and talk about it in a positive way. I read that the last time it was mentioned in a State of the Union address was not so positive by President Reagan back in the 80s. So the fact that he's on that stage, on the fact that he's on that stage talking about it is, in my opinion, a significant positive. But also the analysis you've seen people do around the tweets that came out, I think is just as noteworthy. And so what that's telling us is that the electorate wants this change, and politicians, while they may not, again, move on our timeline, it's showing that there's safety in being able to get behind this position. So I just put it up as another factor in the long, long list of markers along this journey that we're on, that we will get there. We just need to be patient. And we need to invest wisely while we're waiting to get to that other side. You need to make sure, I think, that the investments you have the investment profile and the return horizon to be able to get you to that other side if it takes a little bit longer than you think.
Yeah, I hear you there. I don't know if you saw the podcast on Friday, but lobbyist Don Murphy had some pretty big headline statements within our podcast, basically saying that with Biden now announcing that he's basically crossed a line, a point of no return, more or less, and that he thinks rescheduling definitely is a go and will happen between now and July. So some bold statements, to say the least. If that were the case, then I think all is well. But, at the end of the day, the uncertainty and no news just gets people a little, I think, nervous. But that's the way this industry runs and basically performs. It's all based on headlines. But once we get that headline, then I think we've turned a quarter and we're in a different completely realm of this industry and how it actually performs. Maybe it starts to steer away from just that headline stuff. But regardless.
Yeah. I agree. I did watch the segment over the weekend and totally respect Don. I was with Don and followed him around for a day a couple of months ago. We're going to do it again very soon. And
mark in your calendar, Wednesday, April 10th. We're going. You come with us.
All right, we'll try to make that a date. I think we'll be down there sooner than that. What I want to say, though, is when people look at the Speaker of the House and a head nod, and there's just a lot of analysis going into details that I think you can convince yourself one way or the other. Like, I could look at that head nod and say, oh, that was a yes, I agree. I could also make the argument, I look at the head nod, I'm like, oh yeah, here we go. He's talking about cannabis again. So, we don't really know. I think we just need to all keep our heads down, stay focused on what our objective is, and execute our own individual business plan. For NewLake, it's about growing AFFO for our shareholders. For an individual's portfolio, it's how do they want to be positioned. The day-to-day news cycle, it's really difficult for, I think, for all of us in the industry to wake up every day wondering, is this the day where we're going to get some news that may make a stock move one way or another? Just focus on fundamentals. That's what we do here.
Yep. I think you agree with that too, Anthony. Listen, appreciate you checking in. Congrats again on the earnings reports. And look forward to doing our next podcast. For all of our viewers out there, leave some comments below. Anthony has been involved in some of the state markets that we've done. Pennsylvania, Virginia was our last video, and we're trying to decide which state to do next. So leave some comments below and let us know which state you want us to dive into next. Hear a lot of rumors that everybody wants to do this great state of Florida, which potentially could be the biggest cannabis market, which is no surprise. But leave comments below, and we'll dive into that later this week. In the meantime, let's keep in touch. We'll check back with you later this week, Anthony.
Thanks for having me, guys. Have a good show.
Anthony.
Always good checking up with him, but yeah, some strong numbers to say the least. This is TDR. Yeah, TDR Trade To Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Anthony Varell, as usual. Smash that like button. Leave some comments below. We're getting Florida, Ohio as far as feedbacks. Christopher Brady wants Georgia as well. So leave all kinds of comments. As usual, as I said before, keep on liking these videos. Let's take this viral. Leave comments below. YouTube loves that sort of thing. So the more comments and more likes that we get, the better to take this viral. So keep on smashing that like button. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and our daily newsletter called Baked In. Some big launches coming up in the next week or two with our head of research, Bill McNarlin, which we'll dive into that later this week. All right, let's now go into segment number 2, which is Into the Wire. Happy Monday. Let's welcome in our good friend, Guap. Happy Monday. Good to see you, sir. And if you shave, no, here we go. You man, that beard grows fast, doesn't it?
Just give me another 6 months and I'll look like the guy from last week.
Yeah. I want to begin with, I was looking at Germany. I also want to begin with the state of Florida. Start with you, Anthony, where there's new regulations implemented in your state that were announced last week on March 6th, where all hemp-derived products are now regulated and have a limited Delta 8 THC, which is actually banned in 17 states. And obviously with these regulations, something these MSOs are going to be pretty happy, to say the least. So maybe walk us through a lot of people that aren't up to speed with this, but why has this been such a major priority for a lot of the MSOs that have all been like lobbying for this to be fully regulated?
I think it's powerful language saying it's a priority of the MSOs. I think intoxicating hemp-derived products are something that's needed to be regulated for a while now. I mean, you've got things like THCA, THCV, THC0, HHC, Delta 8. Nobody really knows how those products are being made. Nobody really knows how those products are being tested or regulated. And I mean, it's good to see that Florida is clamping down on that. Obviously, they're still going to allow hemp-derived Delta 9 THC products, limiting edibles to, I think, a 5 milligram serving size with 50 milligrams in the package. But you mentioned on the beginning of the segment that this is a priority for MSOs. Yeah. And I would tread cautiously here in the state of Florida if I was the MSOs, because please remember that we're going to need to reach that 60% voter threshold for adult use if it gets on the ballot come November.
Good point.
And pissing off a lot of people in the state regardless, it's probably not advantageous to do at this point in time. Like, I'm all for the regulation of these products and getting them out of the market, especially the untested ones, but forcing them out and just the optics around it, I think needs to have some finessing. And the MSOs that are operating in the state of Florida need to find common ground with the hemp operators in the state of Florida to develop a status quo and exist together.
Yes.
Because they do have power and they are selling a lot of those products, or they were selling a lot of those products in this state that generated a lot of revenue. And it really can be a double-edged sword going into that vote in November.
I never looked at it that way, but that actually makes a lot of sense. Because there's one thing that cannabis consumers don't like is companies being run by corporations, right?
No, I mean, it's a touchy subject. I mean, like I said, I'm all for I'm all for what they did. I think it needed to be done, but they better iron out the optics around it and not start a groundswell of grassroots efforts against the move that they just did. Yeah, because that could easily happen.
Yeah, good point.
In Florida.
All right, let's jump into number 2 because it's MSOS Mondays. We want to get to Dan Ahrens because everybody's waiting. But Bob, let's talk about this. Unless you want this, go ahead and feel free to provide.
I had a quick take on the hemp thing because this is a topic I'm really passionate about. I mean, I think Delta 8, like you said, is banned in what, 15 plus states. It's it's good to see some common sense legislation on cannabis. I mean, this is getting rid of some high THC, Delta 8, THC0, THCP stuff, which I absolutely agree with. And it's funny, you talked about the Wall Street Journal at the top. The articles on this were calling it a hemp ban. And it kind of is, but it's also a really low-key endorsement of the hemp-derived cannabis beverages.
Yeah.
So I saw some good takes on Twitter about that and how it can be a net benefit. But also, just like to point out that business, kind of like I did on my debut back in the day at the end of last year, that this entire hemp-derived market was created a bit by mistake in 2018 with the Farm Bill, and they can shut that closed. The states are kind of doing it before the Farm Bill will, and it's good to see. I mean, I think it's good for the populace, and all the business is going to go somewhere. It's going to go back to the traditional market. I think more people in Florida will get their medical cards. I think eliminating this business will cause more business when Florida goes rec. I mean, so net positive if you're an MSO in Florida.
Yeah. I think the only positive too that you can look at it too is look at the rollout and the necessary steps that the state of Florida is doing in comparison to, say, the state of New York in the early days. Like, these are arguably the two biggest cannabis markets in the world. But, I will say that Florida, as much as it's been through its trials and tribulations, it appears is doing everything right. Now the next steps is just getting adult use on this ballot. And as we've all said, proper regulation.
I can assure you, if illegal dispensaries were popping up in Miami, law enforcement would be shutting them down just as quick as they're opening.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree. Okay. Last one I want to jump into before I bring in Dan Ahrens. Germany. What was up with this? Just when you thought, we got adult use that's been legalized and announced a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. There's now a German committee that's recommending a series of changes to the marijuana legalization bill. And needless to say, if these changes actually do have legs, for whatever they are, we don't know what they are. This is only going to delay things even more. And I don't know what to think of it. Maybe it's nothing. I don't want to jump to conclusions. However, it's just like, this kind of like from a PR standpoint looks really bad. Because it's like pulling the rug with under your feet. Like, is this really legalized or not? But as I said, this is going to delay things, Guap.
Yeah, following the cannabis sector is a civics lesson I never signed up for, right? I know more about subcommittees than I ever cared to, thanks to safe banking and all the rest. So forgive us if our knowledge of German civics aren't as good as we are in the U.S. But yeah, so the Bundestag, I think I pronounced that pretty well, actually.
That's correct.
I'm sold.
Yeah, right. That's the parliament, right? And the Bundesrat is a state represented chamber. So the state represented chamber, known as the Bundesrat, has attempted to block cannabis legislation in the past. Okay. So it passes out of parliament, and then it kind of goes through you cool with this Bundesrat stage? Not quite a Senate House relationship, but you could draw some parallels there.
Yeah.
So the Bundesrat has the option of stalling legislation,
right,
by recommending that it go to a mediation meeting on March 22nd. Okay. Does anyone know if that's going to happen yet? No. It might. Okay. So, and if that,
so there might be nothing. This is just a big ball of nothing. Then,
yeah. You notice all the conditional statements and ifs I'm dropping here. If that happens, it could push the legalization back 6 months from April 1st to October. So all the possession and the clubs get pushed back, and all the other things we talked about on shows past 2 weeks ago. What's funny is that the mediators can't actually even change the law. So this feels to me, again, not being an expert on cannabis, German cannabis legislation, this feels to me a bit like a possible delay tactic on the part. It could just be for optics on the part of the state representative chamber. But I couldn't tell you. I couldn't give any percentage chances of it happening. I don't really know. And anyone who's tried to do that has failed. So we'll wait and see and cover it.
Well, regardless of what happens, Maverick 610 seems to like your German accent. Well pronounced. Tech Monkey. Hi, everyone. The Dales Report is now my #1 favorite channel for this sector. You all do such a really great job. Thank you. Awesome. Appreciate that. I'm glad that we can provide content for you to people like yourself every single day. And Christopher Brady, just keep putting those comments about how rescheduling, we could get an announcement today. One day you're going to be right, but appreciate the consistency.
He's consistent.
Yes. Yeah. All right, gents, that wraps up Into the Wire here at the TDR Trade To Black podcast. Mitch, cue up that music. It's time for MSOS Mondays with the none other Dan Ahrens from AdvisorShares. Happy Monday. How are you, sir? And good to see you. How was your week?
Well, it's a really ugly red day today, so it's a difficult question to answer.
I hear you. I hear you. Let's welcome in Dan Ahrens from AdvisorShares and their ETF MSOs. Dan, I want to begin. Look, as this day-to-day stuff, we keep saying it. Now we're really living it. Yeah. But this was a big moment for the industry last week. It was only 12 seconds. You had President Biden that was on addressing the nation. What a setting that was. And he talked about cannabis in a positive light. You've been following this industry for a while. You got to look at that and think that was a big moment for the space. Was it not for you?
Definitely a big moment. And I think strictly because of that moment, we saw a green uptick on Friday. Yeah. But that will lead right into today. We have always said this stuff is going to be extremely volatile, even when we think we're getting federal reform on the way.
I know,
extreme volatility all the time. And even with positive things like, again, the president mentioning it in the State of the Union speech, we always have said that SAM and other organizations like that are going to come out with negative information still. They're still going to fight it. Even once we get the DEA announcement that we all expect, there's still going to be lawsuits. There's going to be negative stuff. Yeah. And who the hell even writes for the Wall Street Journal anymore? I mean,
I know.
Come on. Print media has gone the way of the dinosaur.
Correct. It's mostly hedge funds and political pundits that are their sources.
Yep.
They don't have
Sam, unnamed sources and it's a garbage article that we all should have expected.
Sam today was literally posting on Twitter to sell. They were telling people to sell MSOS. I was like, well, you guys realize that that's actually financial advice. Telling people to actually sell a stock, citing the Wall Street Journal article.
Yeah,
it was comedic to say the least.
Well, so comedians like them can perhaps say things like that because they're not registered investment advisors like my firm is.
Correct.
We are highly regulated. Sam,
I know.
Who knows? What? Somebody gonna sue him?
So you're referring to the Wall Street Journal story over the weekend, or actually late last week, where they were saying that federal officials are at odds with the Biden administration, and that was pertaining to his, I think, comments from the State of the Union address. And I think we can all agree here that's just another example of mainstream media doing what they're doing and fear mongering. But I think the difference now in today's day and age is more and more mainstream media companies lay off people because their medium is dying. They have less and less resources and create clickbait material. I know this firsthand because I used to work in that environment. But what is great, what proper fucking journalism is, boys, is actually speaking to people that are on the floor in Washington getting the firsthand source. So Don Murphy that was on Friday basically says, when you make a comment like this, you can't put your face and your message in front of a nation and turn back the clock. Obviously, Don was a little bit ticked off because he wants descheduling. For us, I hope descheduling happens too. But the first step, incremental, is about rescheduling. And his comments to us was, this is a lock and will probably happen between now and July. So I don't know if you got a chance to see that or listen to that.
Of course. Yeah.
But what'd you think?
I respect the heck out of Don. I think Don's a very smart guy. I think Don is very tuned in, and I would listen to anything Don says, and plenty of other people that we talk to and get information from, as compared to anonymous sources and
Correct.
former DEA.
Yeah.
Right.
Come on, give me a break. But once again, we should have always expected this. So today was a really ugly day. It kind of pisses me off. I wish we wouldn't have days like this, but we've always said it's par for the course. And let's talk about psychology a little bit.
Yeah.
If we could go back in time a few weeks and I said, hey, there's another opportunity to buy GTI at, $11.50. There's more opportunity to buy TrueLeave under 950. People would say, oh yeah, I'd love that. I'd buy with both hands. But then the psychology is,
Correct.
oh my God, everybody panic. It's because stocks don't go down unless there's negative news, some reason for them to go down, something. It makes your amateur investors uneasy. But in my personal accounts, today's like days like this and most of last week, it's a gift from the gods.
Yeah.
Buying more options in my personal accounts.
Good to know.
Love to
Jen's
jump in.
fire away with some questions.
Yeah, I'd love to jump in here and just comment on a couple of the last two. We are if a LinkedIn post can get the stocks to rip 8% up, a Wall Street Journal article citing anonymous sources, categorizing it as at odds. Those are carefully chosen words, given that all they were really reported to be doing is the HHS officials requested information from the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel. They're consulting lawyers.
Yeah.
That certainly doesn't feel at odds. It feels like they might be doing some due diligence in anticipation of a decision. Again, that's just my read, but all this, you're absolutely right. In a retail-driven space, a LinkedIn post can move things. An article from the Wall Street Journal can move things, and it doesn't change a damn thing.
Yeah.
Hey, since we're talking the article and so on, let's go deeper into that.
Okay.
Because no, Guap, you said an excellent point that in this negative hit piece article, they did go ahead and say that the HHS did, contact the Offices of Legal Counsel.
Yeah.
But so the OLC opinions are an interpretation of law that are binding. It's a binding interpretation of law. So if they reached out to the OLC for a legal opinion, a written legal opinion is an official doc, and I guess you could look at it either way, but I would think that is a cover your ass document.
Interesting.
For moving forward with the rescheduling.
Right.
What that does is that gives you a legal doc in your hand to back up the rescheduling. So
I think it's a good point, but it also cuts both ways. If it doesn't come out in our favor, then you've got a legal opinion sitting there that will work against us. But but if it does come out positive, then I mean that's an inflection point for.
But the DEA operates inside of the DOJ, and the DOJ answers to the White House. And in the State of the Union, he mentioned the rescheduling. Yep. So
what are you implying there? What are you thinking there when you say that?
Personal accounts. I'm buying. I have to freely admit, I'm a homer here. I happen to manage an ETF that gets paid on growing assets.
Right.
So, and I'm a fan. But we gotta look past. I mean, all the garbage, the noise, the misinformation, and listen to smart and educated people like Don Murphy, and nothing's changed.
Yeah, I hear you.
Have we heard reliable sources?
Yes.
That have said anything has changed.
Yeah.
Anything except it's coming.
Completely agree.
A 252-page HHS document that is, pretty good evidence.
There's a lot of stuff that I find in this industry that there's a lot of headlines that go out there, but there's no names mentioned. It's just a blanket of stuff. And to me, it's just like, okay, like if you want proper journalism, you got to reach out to somebody who has the source. And when they have the source, you know, you got to go on record to basically state what you're stating. If you're not, then it's garbage. That would never get printed or posted, say, 30 years ago.
I just changed into my anonymous DEA source costume. How am I doing here?
Here we go.
Tell me,
reliable
person.
You want me to tell you what's going to happen now? As a
reliable source.
agent?
Let's throw things over to Guap right now. Guap, what's the latest?
Dan, so going back to the ETF, I mean, you know, everybody watches the moves that you guys are doing with a fine tooth comb. One thing that we got submitted a couple times. So there was a move you made with Curaleaf last week on the day that they reported earnings. I think you trimmed a little bit. Did that have to do anything with like the swap to share conversion or the weighting?
Okay,
in the
yeah,
ETF?
it got asked out on X, and
It did, yeah.
So, yeah, step one is people are way too tuned in to little tiny moves that could be meaningless.
Correct.
Yes.
This particular thing,
it
goes hand in hand with the entire problem. You know, it took me 2 months of conversations, getting additional information from Curaleaf and Camilo and everybody there to try to present to the people at Bank of New York Mellon that they could present to their attorneys. It took 2 months.
Yep.
But here's something I ended up tweeting this. Okay. Authorized participants. Those are the ones that can create shares of the fund. They create, redeem. Sometimes the market makers are one and the same with that authorized participant, or sometimes a market maker clears their trades through an authorized participant.
Yeah.
Well, an authorized participant is commonly a bank, or they're owned by a bank.
Okay.
Like Merrill Pro is an authorized participant. They're owned by Bank of America. JP Morgan is a authorized participant. So on Monday last week, MSOS got some creation units. And 2 days later, on settlement day, I was getting pinged and had conversations with the market maker that the particular authorized participant could not deliver Curaleaf.
Got it.
Because that particular bank that owns that particular authorized participant still had Curaleaf on their non-permissible list.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So I spoke to Curaleaf. I sent information along, and I said, "Hey, everybody needs to try to clean this up. Get Curaleaf approved at that particular bank's non-permissible list as well." So, hell, that's a really long answer right there. But
well, that's why I asked, because it's
thank you, Anthony. Thank you. It's a great question. I love the educational moments here. So, there were 77,000 shares that were supposed to be delivered in kind. They changed it to cash, and then the next day I went ahead and bought some more Curaleaf.
There you go.
Yeah,
on sale.
I told the people I told the people I would ask, so I wanted to stick to
great
it.
question and educational moments.
Well, let's focus on some maybe lasting positives. 48% of participants achieved remission and 65% showed clinical meaningful improvement. And I'm talking about MyMed's latest data results from their phase 2B trial last week. And some of the people that I've spoken to within the industry said that is some of the best data that they've ever seen within the industry. And it kind of, what was that stock up 50% in one day?
50,
if I'm correct,
53.
Anthony?
Yeah, pulled back a little bit today.
Pulled back today,
pulled back a little more than a little bit today. But with extreme volatility, just like with cannabis, and a huge bump up last week. The largest holding in our psychedelics fund. And
I just think it's a sign of things to come for the space, though. Like what you saw, like if you get an actually FDA approved drug with Lycos, formerly known as MAPS, as we've indicated a few times in our podcast previously, later this summer, wake up call for the industry. But again, the data that continues to come out of these trials is like jaw dropping. Like it's to think of those kinds of stats. Again, a lot of people think it's too good to be true, but it's not. And that's, I guess, the reason why it takes time. But whatever is being produced is always extremely strong.
Yeah, and that's it's great for MindMed, and a big jump there, but that's going to bleed over into the entire into the entire space.
Yeah.
So quick reminder to anybody listening, on AdvisorShares.com, you can look at the holdings updated every single business day of PSIL.
There you go.
And
I like that shirt.
Hey, stand up a bit. Let me see that shirt. Oh, that's sharp.
That's a good logo.
And remember,
in your mind,
much like cannabis, but for completely different reasons, for the last 2-3 years, psychedelics was pretty lousy.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to tout short-term returns, so I'm going to tell you, people, look up PSIL year to date. It's kind of impressive, off of lows and bad performance last year or the year before. So don't get me wrong. But yeah, look up the performance of PSIL, folks.
There's the link right there, actually. AdvisorShares.com/ETFs/PSIL, which will give you all the holdings within that ETF. But yeah, it's been great. I actually was speaking to the CEO of Numinous again last week, Peyton Nyquist, who really was explaining, like, we are starting to see the pathway for a lot of these top 4 or 5 companies within the actual industry. Some of the conversations I had in this space 2-3 years ago, I can't even look at probably 2 minutes of the interview. It's just, it was a joke with some of the stuff that was created. But I think, like anything, it's trial and error, but we're now getting a better understanding as to the trials that are being put in place and the commercialization that's around the corner that pertains to it. And it's encouraging for the industry for sure.
Well, I got another one, another ticker for people to take a look at. Patience, and made a huge move in the fund last week. That's P, B as in boy, M as in Mary, PBM. So that stock, it de-SPAC'd back in January. We attend like any SPAC, it's terrible for a few weeks, and then we bought it. And then, much like MindMed, they had some big announcements last week.
Yep.
So it's still not a huge holding in the fund, but it's getting there because it's been growing like crazy in the past 2 weeks. So PBM, people, look it up.
Good to know. Listen, appreciate the time. Thanks for checking in and the updates as well, and your thoughts on obviously what Biden said last week, and then the encouragement pertaining to the psychedelic space. But we'll keep in touch, and we'll see you back Monday here for the podcast again.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
Sir.
All right, gents. Good to see you guys on a Monday. Always good to run in with him. But yeah, I think that pretty much puts it into perspective. He said, I'm buying. He's a homer, but who wouldn't be? You got the biggest ETF in the industry that trades more volume than any other stock combined within the actual space.
I'm right there with him. I've got some very toppy looking index funds, like we were talking with Chartman Dan, and money is always rotating from somewhere to somewhere, and even when markets go down or up. So we can always manage our own portfolios and try to take advantage of some of that sector rotation on, I don't know, maybe a Wall Street Journal hit piece.
Yep.
I would bet that you see profits from the crypto sector roll into cannabis sooner rather than later.
For sure.
So that's probably a rotation that's going to happen as well.
Why wouldn't it too, right?
That's a natural one.
Yeah.
All right, gents, this wraps up today's TDR Trade To Black podcast. Jam-packed week. We have David Gobert from Air Wellness that's actually coming on Wednesday. We'll dive into their latest earnings. Thursday, we got a back-to-back doubleheader, 4:00 with the Cannabis and Juicy, correct, Anthony, on
Cannabis
Thursday?
and Juicy, that's correct.
Yep. And then Friday, Ziad.
Friday morning. Yep.
We've got Dan the Chartman on, but also Ziad Ghanem Terrason talking about their latest earnings. So action-packed week as well. Please subscribe to our baked in daily newsletter. We got some really encouraging stuff coming out, including our cannabis indexes and full equity research reports. The idea for all this is that we're providing you information that has never been seen before in the space, whether you're a retail investor or an institution. And what's even more encouraging about what Bill is creating, this is going to be content that's going to be easy for the everyday retail investor to read and obtain. So please, I'm telling you guys, at this stage of the game, you spent this much time, you need to understand what companies are going to be around, what companies are going to sink, what companies are going to swim. So this is information that we've gotten feedback from various institution, firms that have said this is very encouraging, industry-leading content. So we all want to make it available for you, to make it simplified and easy for you to understand as well. So please log on to thedalesreport.com. Check out the link, Mitch, if you have it right now, to log on to our baked in daily newsletter. Gents, in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, folks. And we'll see you back here on Wednesday with David Gobert, Air Wellness, and the rest of the crew here on the TDR Trade to Black podcast. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Schönen Montag, everyone.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching. And if you want to learn more about the emerging industries that we cover, then leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to interview, the questions you want asked, and the information that you want to learn. We want to hear from you. As usual, click on that bell for all notifications to get the latest information. Share this video with your network, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel, because we